Since 1987, when the Constitution was drafted after the EDSA People Power Revolution, officially the foreign policy of the Philippines will pursue an independent Philippine foreign policy based on its national interest.
A sovereign country like Philippines will exercise an independent foreign policy based on its national interest.
Independent is really to indicate that no one country can interfere in the trajectory or direction of your foreign policy.
Every government, every administration is obliged to say that they are pursuing an independent foreign policy because it's in the Constitution. Of course, the question remains, is it actually materializing or happening in practice?
Although it is already 38 years since the 1987 Constitution was approved, it's still an aspiration today.
We are far from achieving an independent foreign policy as provided for by the 1987 Charter.
The realpolitik tells you on the ground that you are in fact interconnected with the rest of 200 states and economies.
The reason is because the Philippine government has been consistently aligned comprehensively with the U.S. Well, it can be traced, I think, to the time when the Philippines came under 50-year colonialism or colonization of the U.S. from the Rojas time, where Rojas signed a bilateral agreement with the U.S. on the military bases agreement in 1947, allowing the U.S. to operate two major bases in the Philippines, Subic Bay for the U.S. Navy and then Angeles for the U.S. Air Force.
Those who are in favor of this treaty, please raise your right hands. Those who are against this treaty, please do the same.
In 1991, when the Philippine Senate rejected the Bases Treaty, it was a great victory for the nationalist movement towards an independent Philippine foreign policy. After the pullout of the U.S. military bases in 1992, the Philippine government failed to build a credible national defense structure to replace our dependence on the U.S. military bases in the Philippines. It was easy for President Ramos to negotiate a new agreement, and this was the Visiting Forces Agreement, which eventually was ratified under President Estrada in 1999. This was the beginning of the restoration of the U.S. military bases in the Philippines.
This agreement allows the U.S. to rotate troops and equipment through Philippine military bases, enhancing the country's defense capabilities. The EDCA is seen as a response to the rising tensions in the South China Sea and the need to counter China's growing influence in the region.
President Marcos went to China on a state visit the first week of January because so many bellicose actions of aggressive actions of China in the South China Sea. Then he shifted policy and we leaned more and more towards the U.S.
And so, Mr. Secretary, I look forward to a very bright future in the Philippines and the United States.
That was when, instead of 5, we now have 9 EDCA sites.
As I said before, Mr. President, we're more than allies, we're family. Today I look forward to discussing how we've made the alliance stronger, including the recent expansion of our enhanced defense cooperation agreement.
The Marcos government is compelled to, because of its friendship and cooperation with the U.S., is compelled to allow those bases to be used by the Americans in a potential war on China.
Now, I think they're even talking about turning Subic into an ammunition depot for the U.S. And also the EDCA sites seem to be configured along the lines of U.S. strategic interests.
And even putting us under their U.S. military strategy of containment against China and other enemies of the United States like Russia and North Korea. So the artificial islands that they have created and converted into military and naval bases, especially in the Spratlys. These are all a reaction and response to the U.S. military encirclement and build-up in the Philippines and other Asian countries surrounding China. So all of this makes us vulnerable to possible attacks by these countries that are not necessarily our own enemies.
Even the same constitution does say that we should have a self-reliant and independent economy. Clearly, the Philippines has not pursued independent economic policies. On the contrary, it has opened up our economy to foreign plunder of our cheap labor, our natural resources, because of at least 10 free trade agreements, and not even counting the dozens of agreements under the World Trade Organization. These were negotiated supposedly along the lines of neoliberal globalization, but in practice, they have opened up the economy to foreign abuse and exploitation at the expense of national economic development.
Ang proteksyon para sa ating mga kababayan sa labas ng bansa ay isa sa mga mahalagang haligi ng independent foreign policy. Ngayon, milyon-milyon na ng mga kababayan natin ang nasa labas ng bansa. Dahil ito doon sa programa panahon ni Marcos Sr. ng Labor Export Policy. Noong panahon na yon, mataas ang unemployment.
At sa time na yon, nagkaroon ng pagtaas rin ng revenue ang mga Arab countries dahil sa global crisis in which they were able to take advantage doon sa pagtitinda ng kanilang langis sa mundo. So itong pangyayaring ito ay nagbigay ng malaking at malawak na opportunity para sa mga Pilipinos na mag-employ doon.
Dahil nga sa malaking pera, no, na ipinapasok ng ating mga OFW, ay talagang nagiging nagiging palaasan na tayo doon sa kanilang remittances. Kaya hindi natin napapaunlad yung ating sariling ekonomiya.
At kung walang matibay na manufacturing sector at walang matibay na lokal industriya, walang disenteng trabaho, disenteng kita, at walang lakas ng pabat sa ekonomiya para makipagrelasyon sa ibang mga bansa.
Because foreign policy, by definition, is an articulation of our domestic policies, of our national interests. The question here is, have we expanded the domain in which we operate that independent foreign policy as compared to the Cold War era?
Right now, unfortunately, we are not able to decouple our economic from our territorial conflicts. Vietnam is able to do that. Malaysia is able to do that. Indonesia is able to do that. They're quarreling with China over the contested sea, but they have robust economic policy. Dahil negative from the South China Sea, lahat na negative.
Perhaps we can follow what many ASEAN countries are doing, and this is to prioritize strengthening their economy, especially with their relations with China, to trade with the intention of having a very strong and prosperous economy that will finance an external defense capability in the near future.
For example, in the case of Iran, the U.S. has sanctioned Iran. And because we maintain good relationship with the U.S., and the U.S. exercise the extraterritoriality of the sanction to other countries, the Philippines may be very careful in developing relationship with Iran. So kung ang ating national interest ay ang langis, Iran is the second largest producing oil country in the world, and even in terms of gas. And Iran also maintains strategic control over the Hormuz Canal, na doon pumapasok lahat ang mga langis mula sa Persian Gulf. So think about it. Now, another area sa Middle East na pwede nating tingnan ay yung strategic alliance natin with Israel. In the 1940s, the Philippines' diplomatic relation with Israel was benchmark doon sa humanitarian. Tumutulong tayo sa mga refugees na mga Jewish na tumatakas mula sa Europe at binibigyan natin ng free visa na makapasok sa Pilipinas. And this is basically yung pillar ng ating relationship with Israel. So it took us a longer time to be able to announce that the Philippine position on the Israeli war on Gaza should stop immediately and that humanitarian mission should be allowed to get into Gaza para sa mga Palestino na apektuhan ng gerang ito. Na, bakit hindi natin sinasabi yan agad-agad? Bakit ngayon lang? It's because the global community is condemning the action of the Netanyahu government.
An independent Philippine foreign policy and fighting for this aspiration does not mean that we focus our attention only on the United States as an imperial power in the Philippines. We should also pay attention to the intrusions of our hegemonic neighbor, China, which is actively engaging in intrusions in the West Philippine Sea.
With the decline of multilateralism, with the increasing bullying of big powers like the US, actually this is precisely the moment where we have to assert our independent foreign economic policy, because if we were bullied before under the multilateral system, we will be even more bullied right now under the big power bilateral bullying of the United States and even China.
There are changes, there are geopolitical and economic changes in the world that will allow us to also focus on that, really exercising a genuine independent foreign policy.
The Philippines wants to rise up from its long-standing poverty and underdevelopment. If the Philippines want to assert itself as a regional power, upholding the regional anti-poverty and pro-development, I think the time for that is now.
If in 2028 there will be a new president, so I hope we'll get a president who may not be foreign policy savvy, but who is a good manager. Many of the countries now whose presidents are good managers, and good strategies, they're the ones which flourish. So enough of all this politicking, because we are not getting anywhere with this politicking. We're just getting deeper and deeper into underdevelopment.
We should take steps to have and build an independent economy, an independent security policy. And we can only do that if the Filipino people lead the necessary reforms, comprehensive reform, economically, politically, and militarily, on their own, and hopefully elect a government that is pro-Filipino, maintains a neutral policy, and is governance centered on the people.
Sa ngayon, kagyat na usapin ang pagkakamit natin ng independent foreign policy. At magagawa lang natin yan kung maisusulong natin ang progresibo at makabayang kilusan ng mamamayan na nagmamahal doon sa kasarinlan at nagmamahal na tunay sa ating bayan.
Bayan namin minamahal, bayan namin Pilipinas, ang buhay ay puhunanin, makamtan lang ang kalayaan, bayan namin